Hello, my name is Bona, and I have with me Nemeka. Nemeka, nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. It's been a long time coming, and I'm really happy that this is happening.
All right, just for the introduction purposes, Nemeka is an IT specialist, and I don't want to say so much about Nemeka. I would like him to tell us more about himself. So, do you consider yourself as an IT specialist?
Well, now that is an interesting question. Um, okay, let me put it this way. I ended up becoming an IT specialist, but really, I had the engineering at heart. IT, information technology, which some people call ICT these days, information communication technology. I think that's not exactly for me. I'm one of those that believe that C there has no business there, but we can talk about that another day. The important part is yes, in not too many words, an IT specialist is about the broadest way to define me now with respect to the industry that we find ourselves. So I think yes, in not too many words, without getting into the technicality and history of it, I think it's safe to assume that, and I agree, not assume, to agree that yes, I am an IT specialist.
All right, good. So, I think there is an issue that has become so pertinent today. So many people want to go into IT for so many reasons. Some people want to go into IT because they see it as the trend. Almost everybody want to do IT these days. Some people see it as oil money. Some people see it as even a get-rich-quick scheme. So, first of all, I want us to start by understanding what tech is before we go into some of the peculiarities around technology these days. With so much crave for IT, especially among the youth today.
Okay. Um, yes, in your what you've gone through now, there are a couple of questions, a couple of suggestions, and a couple of directions. So I'll try to untie them as much as I can. Um, let me take it from one end. Why is tech so popular now? Why is technology so popular now? Let us be clear. When the word technology is larger than IT, even though in this day and age, once you say technology and you say tech, people forget that tech is derived from technology. And when you talk about tech, people have this impression that you're discussing IT based things. But I don't think so. I am one of those that believe that technology basically defines your structured process of getting things done, usually scientifically. So that means that when you talk about technology, you have technology in the area of medicine, you have technology in the area of engineering, you have technology in the area of physics. A lot of fields do have some sort of technology that is put in place to solve
A problem.
problems,
Yeah.
a problem or a certain set of problems.
Yeah.
So, in essence, that can serve as a definition for technology. But let us also remember that technology is not a word that can be defined in isolation. Technology can only be defined with respect to the area where it is being implemented in. So, if we are discussing technology, you cannot say technology is this or technology is that without giving it a reference.
Okay, so let's look at it this way. For me, I see technology as technology can be information, it can be knowledge, it can be skill, but ultimately, technology involves uh, being more productive. These are tools. It could be machine. It could be maybe very special information that enables you to do things better and faster. Well, let's take a look at transportation, for instance. or communication, for instance. In the past, if you wanted to see somebody in a different city, you need to transport yourself to that city. Or maybe if you want to pass information to that person, you could send your information via mail, which could take days, sometimes months before it gets to the destination. That was the technology then. They were using transportation, they were using vehicles, they were using maybe airplanes, they were using ships to transport that your package, which contains your information. But today we have mobile phones. Not just that we have mobile phones, we have devices that have the capacity of allowing you to do audio and visual communication, which wasn't there before. So I see it's like
multimedia.
The technology now, then we had technology, but what we have now is better. The same thing with agriculture. Before, agriculture involves so many things. Maybe you want to do irrigation. That time you had to create is it called canal or something?
Yes.
And then
the various types of irrigation are there where you had to find ways of channeling water to the location.
Yes. So today we have something like drones. People use drones to apply fertilizers or even to apply water on soil. This is technology as well. So I tend to see technology as means or medium or tools that enable us to be more productive. I don't know whether you see it that way.
Yes. And in not too many words, where you are going is exactly where I'm coming from when I said that you really can't discuss technology without discussing where the technology is taking place. Just a beautiful example you gave is in agriculture. Back in the day, it was tedious to do irrigation because you had to physically channel the water. Long ago, dams were developed not too recently, but then you had to get water from a source. You had to direct the water. You had to physically dig the channels and route it to where all the plants are. Today, you don't need to do that. All you need is a water source, a pump, a collection of pipes, and even taps that can be directed to the base of each plant, as it were. And you can now channel the water directly to the root of those plants just by burying those plastic pipes underground along the rows or ridges or whatever that you use to do your planting. So you can say that we have gone from the knowledge and technological implementation of channeling, digging canals, to building piping systems that are now mobile, durable, and they are processes that are now repeatable. They can be duplicated. They are easy to now develop and mass produce. It also now involves, because once it can be mass produced, it means that you begin to look at the economy of scale, which scale comes back to productivity. Because if you have a process that you can actually duplicate, multiply, then the economy of scale now allows you to do it in larger numbers, and especially if it's some technology that allows for reduced human input, reduced physical labor. Back to the agriculture, I gave us an example. Those canals had to be dug by hand, using hoes and shovels. But now, you don't need to dig them by hand anymore. You just install the pipes. You install the pumps or the water source. You channel them. So it's now easy to get irrigation done across 200 farms in a much shorter time than before. So, on one hand, the very idea of channeling water to plants and not relying only on groundwater or rainwater is based on information that was implemented in irrigation technology. Now, fast forward several years, we now have advanced in that technology to the point where we now don't need to dig those channels, but we can now install them. So it's like you said, it's still technology, but that's another fact of technology, growth. It develops. And that's one of those things about technology that must never be forgotten. If it cannot grow, if it really cannot develop, if it cannot build on itself, then it really doesn't fit the bill of technology.
All right. So now let's go to the tech as most people tend to see it today because I've seen so many people that have accustomed me on so many occasions. They want to go into tech. They had there is so much money to be made in tech and so on. So people even want to pay money so that they can be into tech and start making tech money and stuff like that. And I know that maybe during your own time, because I'm very sure that you went into tech quite a very long time ago. First of all, I want to ask you what inspired you to go into tech? And I want to tell you that Nemeka is a network specialist. And not just a network specialist, he's also very good in hardwares. So, but I would like to know your own story. Why did you go into tech in the first place? Was it for the money? Was it for the fun, for the thrill? Let's know.
You just taking me back down memory lane. Okay. This is essentially my story in a nutshell. The truth is that as a child, I always liked the concept of creativity and repair. What do I mean? How is this table made? How are these joints achieved? How is this microphone made? What makes this microphone work? And essentially, those are the things that drive anyone towards any direction. And I think there's an English word for it called passion.
Yes.
So I would say that I had always been passionate about how things worked. And I was fortunate, and I repeat the word fortunate. It might not go down well with a lot of people who believe that everything should be money directed now. But I am glad to say that I was fortunate to be brought up in a home where money had its place, it had its value, but it was never the primary target. At any point in time, everybody in my house chased a dream that gave them joy. And we were always of the firm belief that regardless of what happened, everything will go, but what lives with you is the memories you've created with what you're doing. So, what would I say was the motivation? And by the way, tech we're talking about here is information technology. We're talking about the computing age. We're talking about the whole 9 yards. Computing, which encompasses a lot of things. That's a very large word, just like technology. You have software development, you have hardware design and development, repairs, you have computer networking in all its ramifications. And there are so many other interleaving bits that link these things up. For me, my creative instinct, my tendency towards wanting to repair things led me in the direction of engineering. And I thought about it while I was growing up. I was lucky to make contact with computers in my secondary school. We didn't have computers.
That was when?
That's a while ago. Okay. I know that we didn't have computers in schools then, but my uncle first, my dad's brother, who had visited once or twice in my SS1 or SS2. It's quite a while ago. That should be about 1991.
Wow.
It's a long time ago.
Almost 32 yes. Or 33 years ago.
Give or take, yes, about
Yes.
that. So I had visited him then, and he had traveled and purchased a computer for traveled and came back and had gotten the system for his kids. His kids were good. So when I came around, I and my first cousins were very good together. So I just got in the mix. Then, prior to that, my dad, when he was actively a lecturer, had also made several trips overseas, both when he did his PhD, when he went on sabbatical, when he also went on some official trips as a lecturer in the university, and had come back with interesting stories of what computers were doing. And the ideas entered, dropped into my subconscious, and never really left. So when I made, would I say, first contact with computers, for those who like science fiction, you know what I'm talking about. When I made first contact with computers physically, it was like a match made in heaven. From that point forward, I knew I really wasn't going anywhere anymore. I was stuck. I was bought over, hook, line, and sinker. So, after secondary school, incidentally, my elder sister also studied electronics. Trust me, she still is quite smarter than I am, academically, of course. But I still decided to do the same electronics. So it was a bit odd. I mean, okay, big sister read electronics. She also wanted to do electronics. I said yes, but was for a hell lot of other reasons. One of them being that I desperately loved to tinker. I remember back then there was this book my cousin got. She also made a copy of it, Forest Mines, from Radio Shack. Radio Shack is a company that used to do design circuits, and they had manuals to tell you how it works, how to piece it together, build those things. From my first year, I hadn't even started doing core electronic courses. You know how our curricula is. You load you up with a whole lot of things, and by the time you get to the real electronics, which is what I studied, you've already hit like your fourth year probably, and you just have like a year. So from an early stage then, because my sister, when I got into soccer, that's where I studied UNN, by the way. I remember she was in her final year when I got into my first year. So she had started playing around a couple of things. I also got interested, and even then I used to, little pocket money I would have, I would actually go to the market and pick up a couple of ICs and build stuff, do a couple of stuff. I did a couple of things, and I was quite proud of myself. So I would say, like you asked, the motivation was, I've already defined it, is the sense of creativity, sense of how things work. And then, of course, fast forward it to when I'd finished from school, when I left university. It wasn't money. It really was never money. I was fortunate to, before I left the university, to meet a couple of people. One of them I still define as my biggest mentor. For those of you who grew up in the 90s, 2000s in Enugu, you probably would know the name Atlantis Research Center. I was there for a while, and I do remember that was another grooming area where I was blessed with a mentor, a teacher, and a guide who, yes, was doing business, but challenged me just like my father did every day of his life with excellence. I never became close to those men. I can't say I have, but I did my best, because it was almost as if there was no other option than doing something and doing it well. So you're now seeing pillars that are being built based on driving factors. You have creativity, repair, functionality, then you're beginning to see an overlay of excellence, which is mandatory. You cannot, before you can say you can do this, there must be a sense of excellence. That sense of excellence will even drive, even if when you do it the first time and it's not so good, you can come back, look at it and say, if I have the opportunity to redo this, I'll do it better. If I'm going to do this in the next place, I'll do it better than when I did it before. I've gone into the second part.
Yes, sure, yeah.
I migrated from motivation to was it about money?
Yes.
The reason I did that because it's not really easy to separate it.
Ultimately, it's about one is passion. You are
Yes,
passionate about
yes.
it.
And
You
then-
had fancy for computer right from when you were
Yes.
a child.
I
Stories your father told you,
I
your
was
experience with the computer, coupled with the fact that during that time, only the elites or very few.
of course very few had
have
access to it.
Yes.
You get
So, and it was fun all the way.
honestly, it still is.
Yes.
In fact, I find it almost impossible to operate or do anything without building in some level of fun, humor, and recreational activity, even into serious work. Because I believe that if what I do can't make me happy,
There's no point doing it.
then there's really no point doing it.
Okay, so let's look at this issue because these days is all about tech. Many people want to transition into tech, which is a good thing. You know, I tell people that there is virtually no work we can do today without the knowledge of technology, IT in particular. Gone are days when you don't need to know how to operate a computer.
Yes.
Almost everything that you do today revolves around computer. Either you are sending documents or you are working with documents, you know, in computer.
That's
So
true.
there is no shortcut to it, so you have to know how to use computer.
Exactly.
You really need to know how to use the internet. You need to know how to get information using the search engine. And today we have AI, and so many people are
that is
still
another that is another kettle of fish altogether.
yes. So people are still struggling with search engine. We have AI today, and
And all that, yes.
one thing about technology is that if you are a lover of technology, you always want to cue in
Yes.
with any advancement in technology.
You always want to be on top of
On
your
top of
game
it.
at any point in time.
Yes. So the issue is now, the issue we're looking at now is as much as I believe technology is for everybody, you don't have to be a network person, you don't have to be a programmer, you don't have to, you can be a graphic designer, you can be a data analyst, you can be a software programmer. We have different areas that you can explore in the IT industry. So what would you advise people that are trying to transition into tech, probably because of the benefits, the monetary benefits they want to get from it? Do you think they stand a chance?
That's a wild one, but I'll do my best to break it down. For some of us who are part of the old guard, when I say the old guard, I mean those who place passion first. It's a bit unwieldy for us seeing what is actually happening now. Let me put it like this. If you go back to my definition of technology, and you remember that we said that tech is about productivity, it is not, the computing industry is not removed from that. The computing industry, for now, for the last maybe 20 years, 30 years plus, and in increasing influence, has become the bedrock for extending productivity in different fields of endeavor. What it means is that your artists who used to do beautiful sketches with his pencil, his crayons, his paintbrush, and other tools and media he used to draw, if he goes and now studies how to use an advanced graphic design or illustrating platform or vector graphics platform, he can now begin to migrate what he used to do with his pencil and paper onto the screen of a computer. Now, he's not an IT specialist. He's not a science person. But what he has done is gone back to what we defined initially, which is using
Tools are
yes available to him to extend his reach and capabilities. So what are we saying here? It goes back to what we said about technology. If it is something that is enhancing your functionality, increasing your productivity, improving your work space and work output, then what all that encompasses that which creates that scenario is the technology. So back to IT, which is the tech in quotes. You see, we all have to understand that what is most important in this life is finding your skill set. I did a little programming. I have quite a grounded understanding of problem space interpretation, if I will call it that, where you have a situation and you need to solve the problem.
Yes.
You need to be able to see what the problem is. You need to be able to understand what is encompassed in this problem. And you need to be able to develop a roadmap to that. In this day and age, I think they have a word called solution architects. I guess that's what they're called. We have a lot of acronyms now. But essentially, a solution architect is basically one big word for what I just defined. Ability to understand the problem and prescribe an appropriate solution. And sometimes being able to have a solution and structure it for a problem that you have not envisioned.
Yes, sure.
So it works both ways. Again, we have to recognize that, like I said before, if you do not understand what your skill set is as a person, then jumping into tech for the sake of the fact that there is this rave, it's like in vogue.
Yeah.
So this is what everybody is doing. So we should all jump into it
before it gets late.
Before it gets late, really doesn't cut it. For me, if my child is motivated towards art, whether it's visual arts, performing arts, graphic arts, whatever type of art, just because I'm an IT person, I am not going to stick my neck out and say you must get into IT. No, because I do know that for whatever it is that he has a drive for, there will come somewhere in the world that we live in right now where the tech, the IT that we do, will have some input in his life.
Yes.
And maybe vice versa as well. So what I'm saying is, firstly, we need to understand what our passions are. I know it's difficult discussing passion in the economy we find ourselves now. It's difficult discussing passion for anything world over. Things have really been chaotic in the last, ever since COVID. It was as if COVID was a turning point. The screw just tightened. For 1,000,001 reasons, the conspiracy.
It tightened or loosened because things are getting better after the COVID.
I don't think it got better.
Because for me, I think after the COVID, a lot of opportunities came on board.
Let me explain to why I said it got tighter.
Yeah.
It got better for those who are now taking advantage of a new way of things being done. But on the average, the young person growing up, the young person coming of age and trying to find his feet, maybe you are a skilled carpenter or you're a skilled vocational artist. For example, let me say you finished secondary school and you went to vocational school and studied cabinet making, carpentry in all its ramifications. Now, you come out and you're stuck with a problem. How do you start?
I think this is where because I think the opportunities now we have more opportunities now. At least somebody can get known nationwide or globally just because of one post on the social media. Yes. I think after the COVID, social media became more prominent.
I agree with you. Yeah. But you remember that the transition between the skill set you've developed and get to the point where you can post on social media.
Yeah.
That hiatus, that gap, that gray area is where we are talking about. That is where the economy plays the tricks on you. Because if you can transition from this end to that, then it becomes easy to now say, okay, I can do this. I do not need to get a shop. I don't need to do a billboard. I don't need to do a poster. All I need to do is get myself, even if it's a phone camera, and begin to take videos. Push it out. People will get across to me from different parts of the world. Remember, I don't know if you remember what happened when somebody was once asked, what business does Google do? And somebody said Google is a search engine. I told them no. Google is not a search engine. Google is an advertising company. People didn't get where they were coming from. You see, the search engine
It's part of the business.
is what was used to get all of us hooked on. Until today, Google as a search engine is still free. Because they know that their target market is not the everyday user. The everyday user needs the information. Their target are those who need to get to those everyday users.
Sure.
So, which gave rise to AdSense, Google AdSense,
AdWords.
Google AdSense, AdWords, and all that,
Yeah.
where everything you do, how often you do it, defines reachability, availability, which they measure and use to key into companies to advertise. So while you're doing your search, products are flashing across your face.
All right. So, just before we conclude, because if we continue like this.
Sorry, one moment. There's something that skipped me. I just need to add very quickly.
Oh, yes.
You know, we're talking about what should be done about those who think getting into IT for money.
Yes.
As a closing statement on that particular question, let me say this. You must first of all know what your passion is. You must also learn that if you find yourself where you shouldn't be, you may or may not make money. Understand this. But you are guaranteed to be miserable in your old age.
Sure.
You may also get into IT. You may get into tech. You may or you may not make money.
Yes.
But at least
Yeah, sure.
you're sure of one thing. Even if the money is not in your pocket, if you look back, honestly, without the whole clout of what social media especially does and peer pressure and all that, if you really look at yourself in all honesty and say, I did it my way.
Good. So ultimately, I would say that tech is something everybody can do because
But you have to key in at your own level.
you have to key in at your own level. So if you are a farmer, you can key into tech. You can use it for bookkeeping. You can use it for.
You can use it to even
uh,
advertising. Using advertising how your farm is doing, the things you're doing, how you're doing them,
Yes.
what things you have learnt, your
Yes.
everyday activities. Because these days people are interested in every other person's lives every day,
Yes.
not their own.
Same thing with if you're an accountant, you need to be familiar with tools for maybe data
Oh,
analysis,
in that particular
business
yes,
analysis.
it's almost like a
Um,
given. It's mandatory.
So you need to go there.
Yes.
If you like numbers, you like solving problems, you can get into programming.
Programming, yes.
If you like connecting things together, you can get into networking.
Yes.
If you like playing around with hardwares, you can.
You know, just like what you're saying, they are the first level IT people.
Yes.
Then they are the second level.
Yeah.
Then you have the downstream and the upstream.
Yeah.
The truth about it is that the first level are those who develop the tools upon which IT runs.
Yes.
There are those that use
Use the
those tools that are developed.
Yes.
We have to be clear about where we are keying in. And even those who develop the tools are also in levels, because there are only very few machine code and assembly code programmers in this life.
Yes.
But then you have very low level languages after, like C, C++, and the likes of them. The population increase is just a little, those who are proficient. Then you begin to move on to other languages that were built on that, your back in the day, Basic, COBOL, Fortran, and even Python, then which graduated to Python that is here today. Then your Java, your C++, which was birthed from C, and it's still very complicated till tomorrow, and all other languages. Then you begin to have others that are now built on frameworks. When you begin to talk about things like Node.js, like React, which core Puritan programmers will tell you that those are not programming languages but are scripting languages. But then again, I mean,
The world is changing.
we don't want to annoy anybody,
Yes.
but I have my perspective on some of those things because I do believe that if you begin to water down competence, and that is one big problem we have in the IT industry now, because a lot of people back in the day, the old school will tell you, if you are incapable of a certain level of critical thinking and problem dissection, you cannot be referred to as a programmer. It is just not possible. You're a coder. We completely you have to be able to differentiate between a coder, for example, and a software developer. That is where semantics also plays the game, and that is what has confused a lot of young people.
Yes.
Because you see, some people think that when you become a coder,
When you learn
You
how
are-
to write some statements, in
yes,
some programming
then
languages,
suddenly you're
you
a
are
programmer
now
and you're a
developer.
software
A
developer.
software developer.
You are not a developer.
Yes. There are levels to
There are
this.
levels to it.
Yes.
It's not. It's you just have to understand. That's why I said you have to understand your passion. Then you have to be driven enough because
To
really,
follow the
yes,
passion.
because there are people who are so good with languages. I remember programming languages are not too different from
The
normal
natural language.
natural languages.
Yeah.
There are people who are good with it, but you have to be able to untie the complexity in your head. There are people who are good with numbers. There are people who will never be anything more than expert coders. There are people who, once they understand the algorithm that has been pushed to them, they will implement it in record time.
Yeah.
Those people hardly ever become anything more than purely coders and base level programmers. Then you have those who don't write code,
They design the system.
but when they design the process, the algorithm is airtight. So it all comes back to it. We need to know whether you're a technology developer or a technology user.
Ultimately, I think that at this level, there is now a thin difference between technology users and
Yes.
technology.
Those who
developers.
define the rules for implementation
Yes.
and those who do the implementation.
Yes. So ultimately, regardless of whether you are using technology or you are developing tools for technology, I consider all of them to be tech.
Tech.
And if you find yourself in any of those positions, it is still very good.
It
And
is
like
good, it's
Emeka
lovely.
said, it all boils down to passion.
Yes.
If you want to succeed in the industry, you have to be passionate
You have to
about
be passionate about
It's going
it.
to be
Yes.
rough. It's not going to be so easy as many people portray it to be.
Tell me about it.
Yes.
Tell me about it.
So,
It's the truth is nothing good is easy.
Yes.
Let's be fair. And anybody watching this, a lot of people will disagree with me. All our modern day YouTubers and TikTokers will probably will disagree with me, but nothing good
Comes.
is easy, even stupidity.
Yes. So this is where we're going to be concluding this edition of the podcast. I thank you so much for making it.
My pleasure.
Nice to have you and see you some other time.